What's up, guys? Welcome to More Than Sawdust. And on today's video, we're doing something a little bit different. Now, you may know me. I'm Chris. Today I have a co-star. This is my wife, Beth. And we've got a little bit of lengthy video today, so I hope you stick with us. It's way longer than I normally do, but we feel like it'll be worth it, and it's some fantastic information. So today we're going to school, business school. Let's go. All right, guys, so if you've watched any of the videos before, you know that I love getting covered in sawdust, the shop being messy. I love all those things about woodworking. But what I don't like is the business side of woodworking. Now, I've gotten a few emails that have asked about some of the business aspects, so I thought, let's make a video and talk about a few tips, a few tricks that help you get through part of that business. And if you're brand new, these are just some starter points that may assist you in not driving yourself too crazy. Now, like I said, I hate this stuff. I hate spreadsheets. I hate doing numbers. I hate anything to do with desk work. So I brought in my expert, who just happens to be my wife. Now, when we got married, I was a 20-plus year corporate 500 retail manager. And so that was driving me crazy. And I never, ever thought that we were going to be owning our own businesses at some point. But as that's changed, I guess I got really lucky and married somebody who proclaimed herself on our first date to be a professional nerd.
It's true.
Her mother also happens to be a CPA. That helps out a lot in this situation. But I thought we would have her on the video today to talk about the business side of getting started with a woodworking business, or really it can apply to any side hustle at all whatsoever. So let's get going. So the first thing we want to talk about today is, why is staying on top of the business part of your side hustle, your small business, just as important as the products you make or the things you're doing on a daily basis?
Okay, it's a great question. Now, before I answer, I do want to say I am not a CPA and I'm not a lawyer. I do recommend you talk to your personal CPA or your lawyer about these types of questions. But just in general, if you want to have a business, you have to treat it as a business. A hobby costs money, and you don't care really how much you spend on it. But a business,
not at all.
You need to keep your costs low. You want to keep your income high. You need to know what your profit margin is. We do things as a business so we can pay ourselves.
Yes.
How much do you pay yourself? You don't know unless you keep up with all of this.
Or how do you even do that?
So is your business successful? If you can't measure it, you don't know the answer to that.
That's true.
And then beyond just the basic numbers of your business, there's quite simply the legal side of it. We have to pay quarterly self-employment taxes to the federal government. We have to pay sales taxes. Now, we're in Arkansas. Arkansas is a very conservative state, meaning that we don't have a whole lot of government oversight. But even in the state of Arkansas, if we're not paying our sales taxes, they will shut us down and not allow us to operate. So part of being a business is deciding you're going to be a business. Yeah. And that means you just have to stay on top of this. You have to put time on your calendar every week or every month to just keep up with tracking these things.
Yeah, so before we get on to the actual information, now we were very fortunate. You've got a background in designing spreadsheets as part of your career, right?
It is.
And then I mentioned my mother-in-law, her mother, who is a CPA, so that naturally helps with questions as we were learning this small business type of thing. How has that helped in us at least figuring out how to do this over the last 8 years? our previous small business, before we started this woodworking thing, as you guys may know if you've already watched videos, is we had a home inspection company for 7 years before I had to change over with the back and knee stuff. So, but how is having some kind of background been helpful?
Well, for one thing, it makes you less scared. You know,
Yeah.
Both of my parents were entrepreneurs. My dad was an architect and a contractor. My mom's a CPA. Both of my brothers have side hustles. Your dad was an entrepreneur. So we both came from a background where owning a business is not a scary thing.
Right.
It's normal.
Yeah.
But for someone who's always worked a W-2 type job and filled out a W-2 type tax return, and you don't even know where to start, getting started on a business is scary. And it's one thing to think, you know what, I'm gonna buy some fence pickets and I'm gonna make a couple planter boxes and I'm gonna try to make $500 to pay off a medical bill or something like that. You know what? That's easy, it's great. But if you're like, you know what, I wanna help my family pay off debt, or in the case of our household, I wanna help pay for my teenagers' tennis lessons.
Right.
Or I just wanna help pay the bills and give up that 9-to-5 grind. You know, it's scary to go from being a hobbyist to being in a business. So I think my background with being an expert at data and spreadsheets and research really fed into that. But even more than that, just our personal family histories of being entrepreneurs really helped us with that. So for those who don't have that kind of background, hopefully today's video will give you a few ideas of where to get started.
And there are certainly, now, like I said, unfortunately, we haven't had to do any of them, just had the resources here in the house. But there are certainly ways to gain education in programs that can help you learn this stuff for sure. Probably online, because everything else is now. So cool. Well, let's dig into some of the tips and tricks and things that we've got that may help out. Now, I want to preface this by saying this is a little bit different than the video I did a few months ago where it was 5 tips to starting a woodworking business, right, on a budget. And we'll actually link that video at the end of this one, so if you want to check that out too. This is really going to be more of the office side of things. I think that's what she has planned. The office side of things and some of those again, we're not giving legal advice, but the things that we've done to deal with some of the legalities you got to have when you're doing that. So, so let's talk about some of those things. And I'm going to look at my notes. So let's talk about what needs to be tracked, because again, I could come out here and get sweaty and covered in sawdust and build stuff all I want to, but what really needs to be tracked when it comes to keeping up with the business?
Sure. So to put it in simple terms, you need to track all of your income and all of your expenses. And that can be complicated. I mean, I'm going to tell a little story on you, but you have been known in the past to literally run out of gas in the Lowe's parking lot because you made so many trips to big box lumber stores in a single day that you ran out of gas. And I had to come get you.
More than once.
At one point, we had 7 gas cans in our garage.
Yeah.
We'll just tell you.
Yeah.
So when you're doing a project and you're buying lumber, screws, sawdust, wood glue, all of the things. I said sawdust. I meant sandpaper. You don't buy the sawdust. You just get it naturally.
Well, some people buy it.
Well, that's true.
You can make things out of it.
But there's a lot of expenses to that. But expenses aren't just your consumables. You also have tools. You have mileage. You need to keep track of the mileage you spend driving to those big box stores, driving to craft fairs, vendor shows. If you have some sort of booth at a vendor market or a flea market or something like that, you track those. You keep up with food expenses. So if we go to a craft show that is an all-day event, and we hit up the food truck while we're there, you gotta love a walking taco at a craft show, then we can keep up with those food expenses.
Or food or candy that we put on the table even for kids and things like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So all of your expenses have to be tracked.
And what about there's also a lot of I say a lot, depending on your business, reoccurring monthly expenses.
Sure.
In the home inspection business, we had, software I had to do the reports on. We had insurance we had to keep up with. We had, all these different things. With doing a YouTube channel, I've got editing software. I've got, a few little things we may use for different things. So there's also those reoccurring expenses.
Absolutely. If you have a website that's maybe like a Shopify account or an Etsy account, there's certain fees that go into those things. And so you need to keep up with all of that. Yeah. On the flip side, the side that we prefer to talk about, you also have to keep up with all of your income. What are you selling? How much are you selling it for? You need to know that because you have to have that to pay your sales taxes, to pay your income taxes. So you have to keep up with all the income. And then there's even things that you don't think about. So these amazing bright lights that you recently installed in the shop.
They look good, don't they?
They take electricity. There is a certain percentage of our electric bill, water bill, internet bill every month that we can take as discounts on our income taxes. So we also keep up with all of our basic household utilities. Now, just a tip from us, we budget everything in our personal account. So we have a record of what we spend every month. And when it comes tax season, that makes it really easy to go in and say, we spent this much on our electric bills last year. Now let's take 5.6% of that because that's the percentage of square footage that this shop is of our house. And let's take that as a discount on our income tax.
You know what else makes easy on tax time? Not saving all your receipts till right before you do your taxes to try to input them all.
I believe a certain someone did that last year and then spent, a week entering all of your receipts into the spreadsheet?
Yeah, for a guy that hates sitting at a desk, that's the worst thing ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just keep all those things in mind that you have to track that. And I know when I just rattled off everything from food truck at a craft show to mileage to household utilities to all your income, all your expensive craft show fees, everything, your brain may have just exploded, especially if you're like this guy. Like, how do I keep up with all of that?
Yeah. And, you guys know I've mentioned I've got ADHD. And so focusing on one thing is miserable. I can focus on 7 things at one time all at once. Makes it hard to get any tedious tasks done. So more the emphasis on what she's getting ready to talk about is keeping up with things as you go and really being efficient with it is certainly the best way to go about all of these things she's getting ready to mention. And don't do like I do and want to cram it all in at the last second and you got to go back and find stuff and dig things out. That will cause you to hate your business. That's what that will do.
It's way better to spend an hour a month than it is to spend a week at the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the next thing we were going to talk about, you guys know I wing everything. It's why I'm looking down at notes. I've mentioned that before. I don't have a teleprompter. I don't do any of that stuff. I try to make it as natural as possible. You guys know that. So the next note we had was for people that struggle with details. This guy right here that struggles with details. What kind of tools, not the tools I like to use, what kind of tools are there available that people can use to help kind of get themselves going and established and set up this stuff?
Absolutely. So the first thing I would recommend is going out and opening up a separate bank account. This can be a separate personal account. It can be an actual business account, but you really need a separate bank account. How do you know the gas you put in your truck for a craft show versus the gas you put in the truck to go out to eat or go to your day job if you're paying for those things out of the same account?
Yeah.
How do you know that trip to Lowe's was for wood for the business versus that trip to Lowe's was a water hose to water our dry grass?
Very dry grass.
Keep everything separate. It also helps you to stay on top of it. Did you remember to track everything? You have a record in your bank account of everything that came out for that small business. So tip number 1 right off the bat is go set up a free checking account. Look, your local credit union, local bank. We love small businesses, so even our banks, we like to do local options for those. So set up a separate account. It really makes a huge difference. Now, you have been known to accidentally swipe the wrong debit card, And occasionally we have to trade money back and forth.
Yeah. And that's a little easier to do if everything's in one bank. Like I said, we like to keep ours in separate banks, our business from our personal. One thing that does, and this is more of a life tip than necessarily a business tip, but when you run your house on a debt-free budget, like I've talked about on the channel before, but one thing that does is it takes away some temptation when you're out wherever doing stuff and you want a new tool or something else that we want, especially in the woodworking business. It's a little bit easier than just blending that in with your groceries or whatever else you're buying, right? Or your lawn equipment. So you actually have to think about it when you got to swipe something separate or you got to take it out of a different bank.
You do. And ladies, if you're like me and you're the supportive wife of a woodworker, it also helps me with my anxiety of, did that tool come out of our personal account or did that tool come out of the business account? And he knows exactly what his business numbers are. So it keeps things very separate, and it gives him some of that autonomy that he likes to buy what I think of as toys, but they're not. They're tools.
Very important tools.
Yes. Also, it's really easy to lose track of how much you spend. We can nickel and dime even a small business. Oh, I just need one more bottle of glue. I just need a little bit more sandpaper. And over a month, you may spend $200 on those little tiny purchases, and you don't realize it unless you're keeping it separate.
And if you're a small business like we have, and what I would say probably most people are, especially this channel is kind of geared towards that type of woodworker, right? And you don't take out loans, you don't borrow money, the things that I've talked about that we feel like are important. You don't always have, a large sum in that business account, especially if you pay yourself monthly out of it, and you basically keep what you need to start a new month and go like that. So, keeping up with that stuff, if you're a big business, you're one of these guys that claim they sell, $1.5 million a year on Etsy, you probably got some wiggle room to spend an extra couple $100. But when you keep a minimal amount in your account to try to be disciplined or to do things on a very limited budget, like we kind of cater to, super important to keep up with it.
Absolutely. So aside from a separate checking account, which is step one, I highly recommend that you have a designated spreadsheet. I'm an Excel girl. I love Excel. You can use Google Sheets. You can use whatever tool that is out there for you. Now, if you're like Chris, Excel is intimidating.
It's horrible.
Doesn't like it.
It's the devil.
Find a friend who does enjoy Excel to help you set up a spreadsheet. Or if you're interested, drop a comment in this video and I could maybe do a tutorial over how I set up our spreadsheet.
Yeah, it like auto-calculate stuff. I'm like, which one do I go to? Like it already does it. I'm like, I don't even know what to do.
So a good Excel spreadsheet, you just need to enter all of your income and all of your expenses, and it can come up with and calculate, how much you need to pay in your different taxes, or categorize everything so that when it comes to tax time and your CPA wants to know how much did you spend on marketing, you say, oh, look, here's the summary page, and it has all of these categories split out for you. And so at the end of the year, we've been running small businesses for about 8 years now. Mm-hmm. At the end of the year, we just hand our CPA a summary page, and it takes doing taxes down from a multi-day event to a couple of hours to get it done.
Yeah. Real quick, let's talk about our experience with, and we're talking about budget friendly and saving money, right? Especially when you're getting started. Let's talk about our experience with using the paid softwares, the bigger softwares, versus a self-created like spreadsheet or a program.
So there's all kinds of accounting software out there: QuickBooks, Quicken, whatever. There's a bunch of them. I'm not going to bash those softwares. They are fantastic. There are, multi-million-dollar businesses that are run on those softwares. but they do cost money. And for a small business, even $200 to buy a 1-year subscription to one of these softwares is a lot of money for us. It comes out of that bottom line. That's $250 that could go towards tennis lessons or something. But the other side that we found is we don't have payroll. We do an owner's draw. Yeah. We're a solo-owned business. We're not dealing with paying insurance, like personal health insurance,
billing out of it.
Yes, yeah. No invoicing. So really all the tools that those softwares use were more than what we needed.
Yeah.
And also, I'll be completely honest, while I am all about a good spreadsheet and all about data, actual accounting terms, like if every time you put in a debit, you have to put in a credit, I don't understand the why of that.
Right.
I do understand a good spreadsheet. And then you, as someone who hates technology, to be honest, it's easy for me to say, if I have the column highlighted in purple, you fill this out. And if I have the column highlighted in blue, you fill this out. And it makes it very easy for you to use. So for us, Excel was just the budget-friendly, user-friendly option.
Yeah, we tried for a year. Her mom actually had to drive 2 hours down from the farm and get it set up for us, because she was accustomed, because she's a CPA for farmers and big business stuff, you know, also along with her family, who begs her to do all the taxes for free. And but what her spreadsheet that she designed, it was 17 pages in the big software programs, and I literally couldn't do it. I couldn't figure it out. It gave me anxiety.
Yeah, so keep it simple. That's kind of the motto we do for everything.
Keep it simple, stupid.
The KISS method.
Yep.
So for us, an Excel spreadsheet worked great. Again, if you're interested in learning how to build one yourself or just seeing what we track in ours, let us know in the comments. We're happy to do that. The next thing that you need, in my opinion, is way lower tech than software or bank accounts. And what you need is one of these. And if you can't see, this is a sales order book. So it's where you go in, you put the date, you put what you sold, how much you sold it for. Was it paid in cash? Was it paid with card? It is low tech. There's a carbon copy that comes with every one of them. So you rip that out and give it to your customer. I think we paid $8 for 3 books of this. And they lasted us right about a year.
And especially for like farmers markets, vendor shows, craft fairs, they're fantastic because you can make your transaction, make a note in here when the buyer walks away from the table, and you've got all that for later. Now, I'm gonna pick on you for a minute.
Okay.
You're a data person.
I am a data person.
For a living, professionally, for a large university system. And you love data. You love all the stuff I hate that we're talking about. Are you saying, would this be overkill even if you weren't a data person? Or would this be a great idea just for anybody?
I think this is a great idea for anyone. Yeah. And there's a couple of reasons. One is when we're at a craft show, especially when there's 2 of us working the event, we may have 2 different conversations, 2 different sales transactions going on at the same time. Think about Christmas. Christmas was so busy and we were running nonstop at the shows. So I may keep a mental tally in my head of how much we've sold. You may keep a mental tally, but by the time we combine them, you know, what's the real total?
Mine is probably wrong.
It's possible. So this keeps up with that. It gives us a record that we can then go in and put in the Excel spreadsheet. It helps us know how much we need to pay sales tax on later. But it also gives us a really good low tech review of the last year. Yeah. We can go in and we can say how many Scrabble tiles were sold, how many cutting boards were sold, how many of these things. And so when we plan what to offer or maybe what not to offer in coming years, we can have an idea of what works really well. Also, maybe we had an event that we tried to sell something at $25 and we sold one, and the next event we sold them at $20 and we sold 10. Well, this gives us that review, because when you are doing a small business, it's hard to keep it all in your head. You think you remember, but you don't really remember. How many planter boxes did we sell last year?
Yeah. I don't know.
You have no idea.
Yeah. Between the different avenues.
Right.
And that's especially if it's a side hustle and you have a full-time job. As we've talked about, we're parents. You got kids. You got life. Remembering how many planter boxes you sold last year, unless you're the Rain Man, is probably not going to happen.
Absolutely. So this is just, again, it's low tech. It's easy to use. If you are like Chris, you can write it down, no problem, and then walk in and hand it to your data wife to help interpret. And it really gives you that good, solid feedback. And it's low cost. Again, I think we spent like $8 or $10 on Amazon for a pack of 3 of these. And again, they lasted us about a year.
Yeah. Now, let me give a caveat real quick. Just because one of you is like me and one of you may be like her in the relationship, that does not give those of you like me an out not to learn enough to be functional to help keep up with the business. There are plenty of times where she may be traveling for work and I've got to keep up with something. She's not feeling good and I go do a craft show by myself. Certainly we try not to do it that way. She typically takes care of the business end of stuff at the end of the month, but it happens. And, or heaven forbid, your data nerd partner can't no longer function and do those services for your small business or something. Don't use it as an excuse not to learn some of this stuff. And
Absolutely.
Believe me, if I can do it, as miserable as it makes me, I can learn it to be functional with it. So can you.
Yeah, and if you are the person who's both someone who enjoys the data and the craft, maybe you view woodworking as mathematics and science, not art, then this will come more naturally to you. But for those of you who, you work in a shop because you hate the thought of sitting at a desk, the best thing you can do are find simple tools that make the desk work easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the next tool on the list is about the simplest thing that you can get as far as a tool. And I don't have an example, but you need a box.
A box?
A box. It could be a shoe box, a cigar box, a wooden box.
A toolbox?
A toolbox. It could be anything, but you need a designated place that when you come home from the orange store, the blue store, your local sawmill, that you are throwing your receipt.
If you're lucky enough to have a local small business hardwood dealer, please check them out first. That's a plug for small business.
Amazing. And they know wood. Plus, it's just, you go in there and you pet the lumber. Yeah, Is that weird?
The one closest to us, there's 4 old guys that keep it running. They're only open 6 hours a week, a couple mornings a week. It's their, I don't know, maybe they get away from their wives. I hate to even say that, but
that's what they'll tell you.
They sit around the table, play cards until people come in. They know every piece of wood that comes in that place that they purchase. And of course, they've been woodworking for 400 years themselves. So
absolutely,
they're fantastic at helping out. So find you a place like that if it's even anywhere remotely close. I know there's a guy on YouTube that I follow, on Facebook that I follow, and he drives like 5 hours to get to a hardwood place closest to him, but he makes that trek like once a month, picks up his supplies for the month because he'd rather go there. Well, the big box stores don't even carry a lot of this stuff especially if you're dealing with hardwood, so fine stuff.
So, but whenever you go, whether it's ordering on Amazon and you're printing off a receipt from Amazon, or going to a big box store, or maybe running to a craft store because you need some paint or a paintbrush, Throw those receipts in your box.
Yep.
Again, most of us, even the data nerds, aren't entering every expense right when it happens. You have a time once a month at the end of the month where you go in and you enter all of those receipts, you enter all of your sales into your spreadsheet all at the same time. And if you have a box that's sitting on your desk that when you come home and you empty your pockets out, all your receipts go in that box, it makes it so much easier.
Now, don't throw your Taco Bell receipt in there with the hardwood and the
unless you ate Taco
receipts.
Bell while at a craft show, then
right.
you need that receipt.
See, this is why I mess stuff up. So we've got some basic stuff on record keeping out of the way. Some good ideas for simplistic, and then also some ideas for more formal record keeping. For longevity purposes, for taxes, so your CPA doesn't hate you, that kind of thing. And so let's talk about the important part.
Money?
We gotta make money for our products if our intent is to sell them. I should say we don't have to make money. We've got to be able to take money.
Sure.
We've got to be able to receive payment for our products. And believe it or not, when we were kind of doing research and prepping ourselves, watching YouTube videos, learning about craft shows, craft fairs, farmer market, those type of things, one of the common themes we heard, and I would agree, is that people don't prepare themselves with enough ways to take payment when you do these venues. Now, obviously, if you're selling online, you have an Etsy store, or there's avenues those websites have set up, right? So, but if you're doing something in person, or you're selling on Marketplace, which is super common also, of course, you got to give yourself ways to take payment. And a lot of people lose sales and short themselves because they don't have enough options for a consumer or buyer to pay them. So let's talk real quick about some of the basic common options that you have.
Sure. So first of all, what you're talking about is technically known in the financial world as frictionless purchasing.
Yeah.
So this is when you go to Amazon and you simply click the buy now button. The less friction, the less steps someone has to take to make a purchase, the more likely they are to make the purchase.
Yeah.
The harder it is to make the purchase, the less likely they are to buy something. It gives them 5 extra seconds to reconsider, do I really need this? And so what we want to do as a small business is to remove as much friction as we can. Now, if you have a personal website, you can set up easy purchasing with an online cart. However, that personal website for your business does cost money, and maybe you're not ready for it yet. Maybe that's not what you're wanting to do. Maybe you are focusing on the craft fairs, the Facebook Marketplace, those kinds of things, the in-person, face-to-face sales, which we have found actually we make more money with right now than trying to do the online methods.
Yeah.
So you're right. We need to have as many options out there as possible. And I would recommend, if you're brand new, you're looking at woodworking for the first time ever, and you're maybe booking your first craft show, your first pop-up event, something like that, you really need to start 3 to 4 weeks in advance in preparing your financial money take-in process, because some of these things do take a couple of weeks to put in an online request and get approved.
Yeah.
So start about a month ahead of time if you can to get those things going. Now, I recommend at least 3 ways to take payment.
Okay.
First of all, we don't take personal checks unless it is someone we actually know.
Yeah.
If my mom is buying a planter box, first of all, we don't really charge her, but if we did, we would take my mom's personal check.
Don't say that. I charged her on the last one.
Oh, okay. And she wrote a check.
She
but
did.
We know she's not going to bounce it. We know where she lives.
I was needing to buy some new stuff for the shop.
At a craft fair, we're not going to take a personal check from Joe Schmo because we don't know that it's good.
Right.
Plus, how many people walk around with a checkbook anymore? I don't even have one.
Yeah.
So we don't do personal checks. Cash is always the best option. We love to take cash. You don't have to pay fees on cash. It's really easy to do, but you have to go in with cash if you're going to accept cash.
Yep.
If you're selling a $25 planter box, you need to be able to make at least change for a $100 bill.
Yeah.
If you are going to a craft show, I highly recommend going in with 10s, 20s, 5s, and 1s. Now, we really like to price our products at $5 increments, so we don't worry about 1s.
Try to make it easy.
So, we really focus on those 5, 10s, and 20s, but you have to have cash going in to make change, and quite a few of the smaller bills. So be prepared for that. When you go to that first craft show, you need to have the change with you. The second method that I recommend is some sort of online payment that people do with an app in their phone. So Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, some option like that. We personally use Venmo.
Yeah.
It's what works well for us around here.
We started off with PayPal, which is all I had before this. I used it for eBay and things like that.
It's not as trendy.
We have found out, and maybe we're just old, or maybe I'm old. I don't know. I'm older than her for sure by a lot. But not a lot of people use PayPal anymore. It doesn't seem, at least not in our area at the fairs we go to. Cash App is a big deal. Venmo is really common. So just maybe kind of do a little research, ask some questions, of if there's a farmer's market or a craft fair or something you're going to start doing. Maybe just do a little research with whoever runs that, or if you go to it frequently, not as a vendor but as a buyer, just find out, because you don't want to get there and have one thing available and nobody's got that to pay with.
Absolutely. And if you are starting, it's a great tip. If you are starting out for the first time, reach out to the owner or the organizer, the facilitator of the craft fair. They'll give you great information. I want to give a shout out to Vendor Fest in Central Arkansas. Most of the craft fairs we do are through Vendor Fest. Yeah. And Amber, who's the owner facilitator of that, I contacted her and said, hey, this will be our first time. I have questions. And she was so sweet, and she answered all the questions that we had, and it really helped us give a start up. Yeah. People who own those types of businesses love and have a passion for small business, and so they want to see us succeed. So don't be afraid to reach out to them.
Absolutely.
If you do something like Cash App or Venmo, you can go onto those websites and get a QR. That's that weird digital looking box thing that you can scan with the camera part of your phone. Print that out and put it in a frame and set it in your booth. And you can have, right there, scan this to pay. And it makes it very easy, very frictionless for someone to do that. The third option that we recommend, and honestly, in my personal opinion, you cannot run a small business without today, is the ability to take debit or credit cards. So we personally use Square. There's a lot of different options for this, but we use Square, not a sponsor of the channel. Call us if you want to. But with Square, when you sign up, you get one free, or you did when we signed up, free card reader. These little ones are $10 if you buy extras. Yeah. Buy extras, your husband will leave it in his jeans pocket and it will get washed. Ask me how I know.
One time.
Right at Christmas when we really needed multiples.
Yeah, we actually had to get one sent quickly or something.
We had to, overnight express one.
Yeah, to even get it here in time.
So these, like I said, are about $10. They plug in to the bottom or side or top or whatever of your phone into the C port, and you can just swipe and ring up your charges. Yep. There is a small fee for both Venmo and Square. It's typically between 1% and 3%, but if you don't have this, you will lose sales, and I would rather pay 1% to 3% for a sale than to make $0 on a sale.
Yeah, and I'll say this, so, and coming from our previous business, the home inspection business, when I got into it, there were a lot of guys that had been doing it for a long time that were getting out of it. In fact, that's the way I really got rolling, along with the COVID boom that happened in the real estate market. But that's the way I got in with some of my very frequent realtor partners, was they just had guys that were retired or getting out of the business that they'd been using for a long time. But one thing I heard quite a bit is they quit using some of those home inspectors, and this would carry over into anything because some of them only took cash. And you're talking about home inspections, 300 to 700, 800, depending on where you're at in the country, the market. But they would only take cash because they didn't want to pay a 1% or a 3% fee or whatever it is. And certainly if that's a big deal, you can do research again and find whatever has the lowest fees that suits you. But do not limit yourself over a couple bucks off a craft show transaction.
Absolutely.
Like, just don't do that to yourself, especially getting started when you don't have that kind of leeway to turn down sales. Don't do that.
No. And when it comes to point of sale systems, which is what a Square is, it's a POS system, there are the $10 options and there are $1,200 options, and there's a ton of middle ground. So you can have just the basic card swipe where you pull it up on your phone, you enter the amount, you swipe the card, you're done. Yeah. You can have the separate little handheld terminal. Those range between $75 and $200 where you enter the amount on the terminal. It's not tied to your cell phone. Some people prefer it not to go through their cell phone. Sure. And you can even do touch cards with it. Again, $75 to $200, depending on what you're going. And then you can go all the way up to like a $1,200, almost like a register with like an iPad that you flip it around and let them sign. For us, the $10 option has been sufficient.
Yeah, we're cheap.
It also works. Like, what are we going to gain by going to the higher ones?
We haven't had a need for that. If we had $1 million business, maybe we'll just spend money on that.
And someday we may go up to the $100 separate terminal because it can be helpful when you're running a busy craft show.
And this is one less thing you got to keep on your table.
Absolutely.
Most craft the ones we do, you get a 10 by 10 area. Depending on how busy that show is in terms of vendors, you got to stay within your tent or your booth or whatever the setup is. And so we cram our tables full of product. Obviously, you want to make it look nice and organized, but we don't have room for a POS system sitting on one of our tables.
We don't.
And so having something that's just so portable, it can sit in your pocket while you're not, if you're slow. So
yeah, I love to wear an apron at a craft show so I can keep my cash in there. I keep my receipt book in there, and I keep my cell phone with the Square already attached in there. And so no matter what they want to buy, I can pull that out quickly and pay for it. Yeah. So 3 options: cash, some sort of app like Venmo, Cash App, and Square, or some way to take debit, credit card. And it's really interesting because we have found in our experience that depending on the craft show you go to, there's always one predominant method. And so we go to some craft shows and everyone pays with a debit card. We did one craft show at Christmas. Everyone paid with Venmo. It was so bizarre.
Everybody.
We had only done a handful of Venmo transactions till then. And then that show we did, $500 of Venmo transactions. Yeah. And then the next craft show that was literally the next day, we went to, and everyone paid cash. Yeah. And that was the only time we've ever had everyone pay cash. Yeah. And so, I don't want to show up at a place where literally everyone's paying with Venmo and all I take is cash and debit card. Same thing, I don't want to show up prepared for everyone to be digital and everyone's walking around with cash. So I prefer all 3 methods. We do have a little sign that sits on our table that says we accept cash, debit, credit, and Venmo with the QR code on there. And it makes it really, really easy for them to know. If I'm walking around and I didn't go to the ATM, if I know straight up that this vendor will take a debit card, I'm more likely to stop and look as opposed to get emotionally invested in trying to buy something and realize they only take cash.
Yeah, and depending on the size of your fairs or your shows or whatever you want to call them, I keep calling them all 3 things in all my videos because everybody calls them different things. But depending on where you're at and the size of them, woodworking is a side hustle hobby. So typically, I know at our show, there's more than one of us at the show. And similar products in a lot of respects. We've been to a show, the one we go to all the time, there's at least one other booth there or table. He does very similar items that we do. Some of them, we do some unique stuff. He does some unique stuff. But we've been to a show where there's as many as 4 or 5 woodworking booths, right? So certainly you want somebody to buy your cutting board and not go to the other guy because they had to walk around and think about it because you didn't have a form of payment. You didn't take a form of payment.
Absolutely.
So let's move on from that. And sorry we spent a lot of time on that, but I know that seems like a simple thing, but like I said, that was something that we heard over and over again when we were researching getting started and how to do a craft show. We'd never did craft shows. And that was something we heard all the time, and you think, oh, that's so silly. That makes sense. It's so easy to overlook and not think about and forget
100%.
about. You're so excited about getting your products built and getting things ready and, oh, we need tables. We got to buy a tent and blah, 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 blah. And you get there and you're like, oh, I don't even remember how to take it. You're like, it's so easy to overlook. That's awesome. Let's talk about one more tip that's important. And real quick, I want to say thank you for hanging out. If you're still with us and you've watched the video this long, it's longer than we intended to be, but we're okay with that because this is stuff that seems obvious maybe, but unless you've started a small business, you've tried a side hustle where you're selling things, it's stuff that a lot of people don't know, and you don't think that until you get into it. And we did trial and error on some. We had some insight on other things, and we did a lot of research. I've talked about that before. I'm a big research guy. And so this is just stuff we thought we could put into one video that may just give you some tips to help you get going. And so if you're still with us, we appreciate you hanging out. This is longer than the videos I normally make, but we thought it's super, super important. And like I said, I've had a lot of questions about starting a small business up on emails and just some comments. So we thought we'd make a video for it. I think we've got one more tip, right? You got one more thing.
And it's really the biggest tip.
All right, so I've talked about it briefly. I'm going to let Beth talk about it from the perspective of a supporter of somebody like me. Now, let's don't get this mixed up. The woodworker doesn't have to be the man, and the wife doesn't have to be the supportive person. It can definitely be the other way around. And you know, if you watch a lot of woodworking YouTube, there's some fantastic lady woodworkers out there.
Absolutely.
That are way better than I am or ever think to be of woodworking. So we're looking at this from a couple, from a partnership, right? Starting a small business and going into this. And when you got somebody like me that has a lot of interest and comes up with ideas all the time out of my head and wants to try things all the time, one, you got to have somebody to rein you in occasionally and calm you down. But I'm going to let her talk about this bonus tip from the perspective of the supportive partner in these type of endeavors.
Yeah, and before I get to the tip, I do want to just add a shout out for the support spouse, the wife or the husband. It can be challenging to live with a creative.
Yeah.
Especially when you're like me and you're very data driven, very practical, very logical based.
You're a planner.
I'm a planner. I want to know what's happening next Christmas, not just this Christmas. And it's, April. So this is his reality that he lives this. I do want to say that there is a difference between being the support and the logic in the relationship and being the boss or the no person in the relationship. It's not my job, in my belief as a Christian spouse, to tell my husband no. It is my job to go to my husband and express concerns or express fears or express doubts or help lay out plans so that we can do things responsibly. And it's my husband's job to love me enough to respect those things.
Absolutely.
So I do want to say that before we get to this last tip is just because I'm the money person, I'm the data person, doesn't mean that I'm the no person. There are times that I do say, I don't think we should do that. But if my going in answer all the time is no, he's more likely to disrespect that answer because he feels like he's kept on an allowance or under lock and key. And that's, again, it's not my job. I'm a partner. I'm not a boss.
And that's a video for another time. We've talked about the budgeting and the debt-free living. I've referenced that in several videos. And that's something certainly we could do at some point in the future on the channel, is a more in-depth, this type of video on that sort of thing. But just to go along with what she's saying, that's a big part of having that budgeting lifestyle, that debt-free lifestyle, is you do have some flexibility as the creative, as she calls me. That's a nice way of putting it, by the way. But you do have some flexibility to try some things and to be a little adventurous and to chase some dreams, that you may not have otherwise.
So my last tip, now that I've expressed that, my last tip as both the creative and as the support spouse is you really need to pray about this business.
Yeah.
And you may think, that's not really a tip. It really is. We have launched 3 different small businesses at this point. And we have done it both ways. We, with one small business, took a lot of time. We took 6 months to pray about it, to decide, is this the path we want to go? Is it the path that God wants us to go? And to prepare. And
you may think 6 months is a long time, but when, in that particular situation, I was leaving a career that I had for 22 plus years, very successful, very well known in the industry. And it's really all I knew. I mean, that's really what I'd done since, a short career in college. So the 6 month thing may seem crazy to some of you, but it was necessary, for us. Yeah.
And honestly, we were going from a steady paycheck that we knew came in every other week.
That's a big part of that.
To variable income.
Yeah.
And we had to make sure that we were okay with that.
Yeah.
And that God was okay with that path. When we spent 6 months praying about it, that business started and ran smoothly. And I'm not talking about prosperity gospel. I want to be very clear on that. I don't believe that just because you're a Christian means that you're automatically going to be rich. I think that is false teaching.
Absolutely, 100% not true.
But what I am saying is that when you align yourself with God's plans, you will be blessed. And not necessarily monetarily, but you'll be blessed with peace. You'll be blessed with, in so many different ways. We started another business, and I'm going to be completely honest with them. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely.
We started this woodworking business.
That was one of the first video things I said was, this is called... You're going to see everything. I want you to get all the experience through me.
So January 2025, you came in and you said, I think I want to start a woodworking business. And I don't know if you caught me on an off day or what. And I went, okay. And that was all the planning and all the prep we did.
Yeah. Guys, whether you want to start a new side business or you want to buy a motorcycle or whatever you're into, ask the wife when they're busy and distracted with their actual job. Now, you may have to pay for it later and explain it later, but you may get a yes right off the bat. I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
It was a very busy time for me. I didn't have time for this.
I'm just kidding. Don't do
I was
that.
thinking it would keep you occupied and out of my way in the garage.
Yeah.
No, just joking. But to be completely transparent, we went into that with no prayer.
Yeah.
And 2025 was a major struggle, and not just a struggle of typical startup of business. It felt like we were fighting against everything.
Yeah.
And right around Thanksgiving, so actually about the time of year we were going into the Christmas markets and business was doing better, we actually got to the point where we said, you know what, we cannot do this without God in the middle of this business.
Yeah.
And we took 6 weeks that time. It wasn't 6 months, but we went from like right around Thanksgiving through the end of the year. And we really spent a lot of time in prayer about what to do with the woodworking business.
Yeah.
And we went from flying by the seat of our pants to having a plan, having peace. We changed a lot of directions. We cut out some stuff that had actually been very successful for us because we decided that those were not what we were supposed to be doing. And if you are not a believer, you may say, well, that was just 6 weeks of planning and logic. And sure, that's part of it. We sat down and we made a plan instead of just jumping in. But
we made spreadsheets.
We did color-coded sticky notes.
We did.
Yeah, we still have our sticky notes. But I believe, Chris believes, it was truly more than that.
Yeah.
It was stepping back and asking, what direction does God want our family to go? And this year has been completely different. And has it been different monetarily? No. Has it been different in terms of peace in the business, peace in our house, and assurance that we're on the right path? 100%. Starting a small business, whether it's creating Excel spreadsheets, coming up with payment methods, tracking everything you do, it's a lot of work. You may have seen a meme out there that says something like, I thought I'd give up the 9 to 5, and instead I took on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job by starting a small business. And that's true.
Yeah.
You will wake up at 1 a.m. and you will think about stuff. And, it's stressful enough that if you go into it without the peace and assurance of God, it's 10 times harder.
Yeah.
So the last tip, and this is truly, in my opinion, an honest to goodness business tip, is put God at the center of all of it. Mm-hmm. Give him that business. And again, it may not be prosperity gospel from the form of, we're not millionaires since we did this.
Right, yeah.
But the peace that we have is completely invaluable as part of it.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's my list of tips when it comes to business.
That's a list of tips. The last thing I'll just say, and again, thank you if you've been hanging out with us this long. Again, we thought it was important stuff to cover, and we've had some kind of, comments and requests for it. So, the last thing I'll say is this is, and I've said it in other videos. First of all, give some thought, like she just said. Do some planning for us and for other believers. In Jesus, that's involves prayer. If that's not you, no problems there either. But there is definitely planning involved, even outside of that, and all the things that she's mentioned. And from a relationship standpoint, please make sure that whatever that planning looks like, you do it together if you're married. Now, if you're single and you got money to spare, hey, you go at it and do whatever you want to do, right? That's not me. So please make sure that you do things as a partnership, you discuss things, and you run things by your spouse. Even if it's buying a small tool. She mentioned earlier that, one thing good about keeping separate bank accounts is, if it's my business, I know I've got this much money. If I need to get something, I go buy it, right? But you don't want your spouse to walk out in your wood shop and see something new sitting there that wasn't there the day before, and especially if it was a fairly significant purchase. So be a good partner, be a good teammate, be a good business owner together, right? And talk about things, even if it's, quote, your business and not theirs.
Can I add a bonus tip?
Bonus tip.
So the bonus tip was prayer. Can I add a bonus?
Yeah.
Have a monthly business meeting with your spouse.
Oh, God, that's a life tip anyways.
That is, we do that typically on Saturday mornings when we're wanting to hang out in our PJs and drink a little caffeine extra before we get moving.
Teenagers still in bed.
And you sit in your recliner. I sit in my spot on the couch, and we go through decisions that need to be made, status of things, and we discuss it. And man, it's a small business owner couple tip is have a monthly business meeting with your spouse.
Yeah. So last thing is, if there's any questions about any of this lengthy documentary that we just gave you.
I love a good documentary.
So last thing I want to add, and then we are going to get off this camera. I promise. Again, thank you so much for hanging out if you're still here listening to our voices. So if you've got any questions on any of this stuff, please feel free to drop a comment here on the video or to email me. I'm going to put that right here on the bottom of the channel. Just send me an email if you want to write something lengthier or it's something personal. You don't like being in comments. I know a lot of people just don't like putting comments on the video or it's public to see. Feel free to send me an email. I have people do that and I can respond to you differently than I probably would have, you know, in the video comment. Certainly write lengthier responses if need be. As Beth mentioned, if there's any desire to have a tutorial on building a spreadsheet, even if it's a basic one or something more particular to a woodworking business, we can definitely put that together and do a video on that. She, again, does that stuff for a living. So I'll sit on the other side of the room and just watch and nod. But man, give us some comments, give us some information, some feedback. If you got any questions or any other ideas for things that, you know, you may, we watch videos of people on YouTube that do craft shows and they travel all around the country. It's what they do. They just travel around and do markets and shows and that's what they do for a full-time living. So, and that's something we might do. We don't have any kids in the house and they're gone.
I love that.
We retire. So we thank you for hanging out with us today. Thank you for listening to me. Probably enjoyed listening to Beth more. We'll try to get her on some more videos when, you know, we're not shooting sawdust all over the place. She don't like getting covered in sawdust as much as I do.
I've made a few cutting boards in my day.
She's made a few cutting boards. Her dad was a builder and owned a construction company, so she's very familiar with tools as well. But we thank you for hanging out with us. Hope you got something good out of it, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Take care.